Welcome back to the Business Ignite podcast, where we light the fire for business growth and marketing success. Your hosts, Ethan Walker and Samantha Reed, bring you the latest trends, expert insights, and actionable strategies to fuel your business journey. Let's ignite your potential.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at team building.
Okay.
But not the typical trust falls and all that.
Right.
We're going a little bit different direction with this.
Yeah.
You actually shared an article with me
I did.
called 10 Places Not to Have a Company Picnic.
Yes.
And that's from 95 Visual by James Monroe.
It is.
And I got to say, just the title alone makes me really excited for this deep dive.
It's a good one.
Because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so we're trying to find these unconventional, maybe even terrible venues to have these team building exercises.
Exactly.
And see if they spark any insights for us about teamwork.
And that's the beauty of the article.
Yeah.
It really grabs you with the humor at first.
All right.
I mean, a company picnic in a mortuary?
Okay, so you're already starting with like
Who would do that?
the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
But then it really makes you think differently about what are we even trying to achieve with team building in the first place?
Yeah, it's like sometimes you have to look at the worst fashion to understand good style or something like that.
Right, exactly.
We're looking at things like cemeteries and subway stations and even a circus.
Yeah.
Who is planning these for real?
I don't know.
But I feel like there's a method to this madness.
Definitely.
So what is the first layer we need to peel back here?
When we think about the traditional company picnic, often it's more about just showing up than it is about really connecting with your team.
Yeah.
And so this article, with these outrageous suggestions, it forces us to confront those preconceived notions.
Okay. Why is a library a bad idea for this?
Right.
Is it really?
Or are we just stuck in a rut?
I think we're stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
We think about team building as this big, expensive event instead of these smaller, more meaningful interactions we can be having.
Every day.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about challenging those assumptions.
Yes.
One of the things that the article talks about is networking redefined.
Yes.
So what's the unconventional take on that?
So most of us, when we think about networking, we think about, being at some kind of corporate event.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their business card.
Sticking their hand out.
Exactly.
Forcing a handshake.
And nobody remembers anybody.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's about how do we move beyond that awkward business card exchange?
Yeah.
And how do we create an environment where people are connecting on a genuine level?
Okay.
And sometimes the best way to do that is to put people in a situation that's a little bit unusual.
Okay.
I mean, imagine your CEO struggling to solve a puzzle in an escape room, relying on an intern's guidance to get through it.
Right.
That shared experience, that vulnerability, it changes how they see each other.
Totally.
They're not just titles on an org chart anymore.
That's so true.
They're people who have shared this experience together.
And you're more likely to remember the person who helped you decipher a cryptic clue in an escape room than someone whose hand you shook for 3 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's about those memorable shared experiences.
Yeah.
So how do these unusual settings play into that?
I think one of the things that these unusual settings do is they really break down those hierarchies
Okay.
we were just talking about.
So we take people out of their comfort zones a little bit.
Exactly.
Throw them in a situation that's unexpected.
If you're all crammed onto a subway platform together, trying to figure out an alternate route,
Right.
the CEO is just as lost as the new intern.
Right.
It levels the playing field.
I like that.
It allows for genuine connections to form because you're all in it together.
You're all in it together.
You're all experiencing the same thing.
And those are the moments, too, where I feel like you see people's hidden talents emerge.
Absolutely.
Right. Like the quiet person in the corner might be a subway whiz.
Exactly.
And you would never know that
if
you were just in the office every day. Exactly. So it's about revealing those strengths that might go unnoticed. So we're trading in the boardroom for a bouncy house, I guess metaphorically speaking, to get those creative juices flowing.
Exactly.
But how does this translate into actual better ideas and results for the team?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The article points out that these casual and often unexpected conversations that are sparked in these unusual settings can be surprisingly fertile ground for innovation.
Interesting.
Because if you think about it, you're not sitting in a conference room staring at a whiteboard.
With the pressure.
Feeling the pressure
Yeah.
to come up with the next big thing.
Right.
Instead you're in a museum, let's say. You're surrounded by history, by artifacts, and just a casual observation that you make sparks a chain reaction of ideas.
It's like that whole thing, constraints breed creativity sometimes.
Exactly.
So you're taking away that familiar environment and those usual thought patterns.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wait.
And it opens up new pathways.
Have you seen that happen like in real-world team building?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One example that comes to mind is a tech company I worked with.
Okay.
And they decided to take their team to an improv comedy show
instead
of their usual brainstorming retreat.
Interesting.
Which I thought was so clever because they were like, you know what, let's just loosen everybody up, encourage people to think outside the box. And the results were amazing because just from watching the improvisers think on their feet and build off each other's energy, they sparked ideas for their product development that they never would have considered in their usual setting.
That's incredible.
It can be that powerful.
So it's not about necessarily like replicating the activity itself.
No.
But it's about tapping into that energy.
Yeah.
That freedom to think differently.
Exactly.
It seems like these experiences help us tap into a different part of our brains.
I think so.
The part that doesn't overthink so much, just plays and makes connections.
Yeah. And I think also when you're relaxed and you're engaged, you're just more likely to have those aha moments.
Totally.
It's like the difference between forcing yourself to be funny and finding yourself laughing naturally with a group of friends.
Right.
Like the best ideas often come when we least expect them, when we're not putting so much pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, and that actually leads us to another point that the article made that I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
Which is the need for a safe space to vent.
Yes.
Now, I know what you're thinking.
Right.
We're not suggesting you turn your next team outing into a gripe session.
Right.
But the article argues that sometimes just letting employees have a space to kind of blow off some steam and voice their frustrations can actually be really beneficial.
It can.
So how does this tie back into unconventional settings?
Well, it goes back to that idea of taking people out of their usual context.
Okay.
Think about it in the office. There's always this pressure to be professional, to put on a good face.
Right.
But when you're out bowling with your colleagues, laughing at each other's gutter balls, it's just easier to let your guard down.
Yeah, you're a little less inhibited.
Yeah.
You're more likely to share those frustrations that you might keep bottled up.
Exactly.
And you never know, those casual conversations, that sense of letting off steam together, could lead to some surprisingly constructive solutions.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about, letting off steam, blowing off steam, but it's about creating an environment where those honest conversations can even happen organically.
Exactly. And maybe even lead to some positive changes within the team.
Right.
I think there's one more layer to this whole unconventional team building thing that's worth exploring.
Okay. I'm all ears.
Well, the article focuses on physical spaces, right?
Yeah.
The absurdity of a picnic in a library.
A mortuary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All these crazy places. But what I find really fascinating is how these unconventional locations represent a deeper concept.
Okay.
Which is the idea of mental spaces.
Okay. I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So it's not just about booking a trip to the zoo.
Right.
But it's about how do we cultivate that sense of playfulness and openness to new experiences within our teams, no matter where we are.
Precisely. And how do we foster a culture that embraces the unexpected, that encourages curiosity and risk-taking?
Yeah, because you could have the most out there team building activity in the world.
Right.
But if your team culture is still just stuck in that rut,
yeah, you're not going to see those results.
It's not going to work.
It's like having, a top-of-the-line blender, but never putting any ingredients in it. You need the right ingredients, and you need the right environment to really make something amazing.
So for someone listening to this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they're not in charge of planning, the company-wide retreats or whatever.
Right.
How can they apply these principles in their own work life?
Yeah.
Like, what are some ways that we can break free from the routine a little bit?
Well, I think it's about finding those little ways to disrupt the status quo.
Okay.
So, instead of huddling around a conference table for a meeting, suggest a walking meeting.
Oh.
Get outside, get some fresh air.
Yeah.
Organize a team lunch where everybody shares a fun fact that has nothing to do with work.
Right.
Just something to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Or maybe it's just being more open to those spontaneous moments of connection that present themselves throughout the day.
Yes.
Right? Like strike up a conversation with someone from a different department.
Yes.
Instead of staring at your phone and lying at the coffee machine.
Exactly.
Actually engage with the new person.
Be present.
Yes.
Be open to those opportunities for genuine connection, and you never know.
Yeah.
That quick chat in the elevator might spark your next big idea.
I love it. This has been such a refreshing take, I think, on team building.
Good.
Because it's not about those grand gestures all the time.
Right.
It's about how do we create those spaces.
Yes.
Both physical and mental.
Yes.
Where those genuine connections can happen.
Those aha moments.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So for everyone listening, we challenge you.
Yes.
What can you do starting today?
Yes.
To inject a little more playfulness.
A little more unconventional thinking.
Into your team and into your work.
Exactly.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
Remember, innovation often hides in the most unexpected places.
Ooh, I like that.
It's up to us to create the conditions where it can thrive.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Ignite podcast, where we fuel your business growth and marketing success. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us. It does help others find the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Business Ignite Podcast and share this episode with a friend. Keep the fire burning. And remember, your success is just one strategy away. Until next time, stay ignited.